My name's Dominic Ridley-Moy and I run the Behaviour Change Network. I run behaviour change training for communications and public sector professionals, as well as supporting you to run better behaviour change campaigns. So we'll just give it another minute or so, and then we will kick off. While we're doing that, I'm just going to ask Danielle, who works with me at the Behaviour Change Network, just to pop in a quick survey into the chat. So one of the things we're doing is looking at how we can support communications professionals during 2025. We're planning out lots more free webinars. So wanted to hear what kind of things are your top three campaign priorities over 2025. So whether that's something like food waste, fostering transformation, climate change, whatever it is you're working on, it'd be really interesting to hear so we can shape that programme. So do fill in that very quick survey while we're waiting, and I think we will start very shortly. Excellent. All right, I think we will kick off. So welcome again, and thank you for coming along and giving up your lunch times. So today we're really pleased to have the campaigns team from Nesta with us today, who are the UK's innovation agency for social good, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a second. So Nesta has three main areas of work, if you're not familiar with Nesta, around narrowing the gap between children growing up in disadvantage and the national average, increasing the number of healthy years lived in the UK, and their third area of focus is around sustainability, particularly around accelerating the decarbonisation of household heating in the UK. So we've got a really interesting session lined up, as they're going to talk about their visit a heat pump service and how they use behavioural science to shape the campaign that they worked on. So usual etiquette for meetings. We will be recording the webinar, and if you have any questions, do drop them in the chat or the Q&A as we go along, and we'll pick them up after Grace and Ellen have finished speaking. We'll share the event recording for anyone that didn't get a chance to come along, and we'll also upload it to CIPR's CPD database. So if you are a member of CIPR, you'll be able to log 5 CPD points for this event. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nesta to take us through their visit a heat pump service. Thank you.
Thanks, Dominic. So I'm Ellen, and I am the campaigns lead in the Sustainable Futures team. And my colleague Grace.
Hi, I'm Grace. I'm the Media and Marketing Officer at Nesta.
So I'm going to kick off. I'm just going to share a slide deck, and hopefully you'll all be able to see it. You should be able to see a man looking at a heat pump. If I can get a yes from someone, because I can't see you now, that'd be great.
Yes, that's all working okay.
Excellent, super. So thank you for inviting us, Dominic. We're going to be talking about our recent campaign activity to support a service which brings people closer to heat pumps. And we're going to explain how we used elements of behavioural science to prompt action. So to give some background on Nesta, as Dominic mentioned, we're the UK's innovation charity. So we're an independent organisation crammed full of behavioural scientists, data analysts and designers, and we work in the three mission areas which we've touched on, which is around healthy life, reducing obesity, a fairer start, tackling inequalities, and a sustainable future. And our Sustainable Future mission is very much focused on decarbonisation, and primarily that of our homes. So in the UK, the residential sector is the third largest producer of greenhouse gas emissions after transport and business. So our homes are directly responsible for creating around 70 million tonnes of CO2 every year. So changing the way that we heat our homes is one of the most impactful things we can do as a country to cut pollution. And we want to make it easier for people to use clean, green sources of energy to heat and power their homes. So our Sustainable Future team works on numerous projects at any one time. And one of these projects is a service that hooks up heat pump owners with those interested in getting a heat pump. Heat pumps are relatively rare in residential properties in the UK. If someone on this call has a heat pump in their home, you're in the minority and you probably know it. There are only around 250,000 currently installed in homes. And this means that the vast majority of people will never knowingly have seen a home with a heat pump. But they are currently one of the most effective low carbon technologies out there for heating homes. And they're widely used in very cold parts of the world, like Scandinavia, and far, far less polluting than gas boilers and really energy efficient. So for those people considering a heat pump, it's difficult to find out how one might work in their home because it's not a common technology. Our research showed that seeing a heat pump in real life increases people's confidence in the technology and makes them more likely to take the next steps towards getting one. Visiting a heat pump reduces the psychological distance to heat pump ownership and makes the technology and its benefits more tangible. So our ambition at Nesta is for everyone in the UK who wants to be able to visit a heat pump near them and get the support they need. So Nesta designed and launched a service that does just that. Visit a Heat Pump enables people to see a heat pump working in a real home and learn more about what it's like to have one from current owners. The service combines a digital platform along with recruitment and training of heat pump hosts to provide a full end-to-end service for the public to see a heat pump and not hear it from a salesperson, not try and find out about it from using the internet, but actually hearing it from someone who lives with one. So we knew we had to work hard with our communications to get the target audience to take a very strange action, to feel confident enough to book a visit to a stranger's home. Our marketing objectives were really clearly defined, which is always really helpful. We wanted to get 1,000 prospective heat pump owners to attend a visit and around 25 to 50 heat pump hosts to sign up to the service to act as hosts. We also wanted to build awareness and credibility of the service with the aim of getting organisational partners on board. So energy companies, heat pump installers, people that could share this tool with their customers and increase its visibility. The approach we took was a combination of paid for activity across social media, search and digital display. We also used PR and other no-cost channels, including our own network. And then we built on the networks of others by providing partners and stakeholders, including local authorities, energy companies and more, with stakeholder media packs, giving them content and copy to use on their channels. Quick note about what we knew about our audiences. So in terms of heat pump hosts, we already had lots of details about hosts from a national survey that we ran, so we could reach out to them directly. We also had contacts across the installation and the registration process. So securing hosts was relatively straightforward, but understanding who prospective heat pump owners are and what their motivations are was going to be critical for this to be a success. So we used research that we had of this audience from our own work and published demographics to understand the audience that we were trying to reach. And it is very heavily male skewed. Heat pumps are an expensive technology at the moment, even though you still get £7,500 off with a government grant. It is still a big outlay. So they tend to be more affluent, own their own home, old, 45 plus with children. At the moment, it's a relatively new technology for the UK, so they're seen as early adopters, likely to have other kind of renewable tech in their homes and keen to share their tech and green credentials. So how do you persuade people to arrange to visit a stranger's home and look at their heating system? It's quite an ask. But bearing in mind the marketing funnel model, we knew we needed to guide users through the process by building awareness and consideration before converting them to take the action to sign up and book a visit. So we applied Behavioural Insight Team's EAST framework to our messaging and our campaign development. And we'll talk you through that now. So in terms of the ease was one of our key messages. So we don't want to create any more barriers than we had to. People could simply log on to the service, type in their postcode, find a home near them and click to book a visit. And we made that really clear in our communications. Attractive, we used strong eye-catching campaign branding and rich content with videos which focused on people in the visit. In terms of the social side, we used real hosts in all of our content. We showed videos and sound bites to illustrate how the videos would work. And by using messaging around local heat, local hosts and visits near you. We led on the fact that it was people like them in their communities that already had a heat pump. And timeliness. So we targeted heat pump visitors who were already searching for information on heat pumps using channels we knew that this audiences use. And we ran retargeting campaigns for those that had interacted with our campaign before to convert them into action.
So understanding who our audience trusted was also really important to support our messaging approach. And Nesta isn't a customer-facing organisation, we're a B2B organisation, so we needed credibility from known organisations. We secured support from Octopus Energy, Which, and the Department for Security, Energy and Net Zero. As the service had been running discreetly for a couple of months, we were also able to gather people-centred content, and we worked closely with our project team to identify particular heat pump hosts that could be the faces for the service and for the campaign. So we developed a lot of content around their stories to show firsthand the benefits of being a host and a visitor. And this content we found was really invaluable in giving that real-life seal of approval. It also meant that we could take media along to heat pump owners in their homes, so journalists could hear directly about the great service from them. So we know from behavioural science that social norms can play an important role in driving actions. And our communications really focused on real people, real homes, and where possible, we covered the spread of locations across the country and the number of hosts and visitors. We also created communications toolkits for hosts to share with their networks. So that would help to move along people from just seeing the service online or in an email to having a local person pop it into a local Facebook group or a local WhatsApp group, and potentially moving them along to book a visit and take an action. We also think that social identity is really important here. So we know that carbon savings is a really important reason to get a heat pump, and interacting with a host might enable a visitor to see that people who care about the environment get heat pumps. Social identity can also relate to geography and where you live. So seeing that others close by to you and your neighbours are getting heat pumps might make people feel more enabled to get one themselves. And this is called collective efficacy. So the approach aimed to highlight that having a heat pump was more common across the UK than people thought, a descriptive social norm. It also went one step further. Seeing a heat pump owner like yourself creates a sense that getting a heat pump is something like that people like you would and should do. Next slide, please. So we use something called the combi method to help us understand any sticking points, and we'll take you through this. So capability, so going into a stranger's home to talk to them about heating can seem really alien and a big step. So we address this with strong visuals of visitors and hosts in homes looking at heat pumps and clear messaging on what to expect, so people felt comfortable with the action to book a visit. Motivation, so lots of people are interested in heat pumps, but they've never seen one in real life. They can't really imagine what it might be like in their home. So we created messaging that tapped into that unknown next step to see a heat pump in real life and to move people along their journey. And then opportunity. So we reach people on channels that we knew that they consumed, often during their heat pump research journey, through paid and through partner channels. So we launched the service in April this year, after having a bit of time to test during the build. So we tested messaging, ads and channels to understand what would really encourage people to sign up and register their interest for a heat pump visit. So through paid advertising, we tested a number of different variations in our testing phase to gather lots of data, understand our audience and prepare for our campaign, including different types of creative, different types of messaging and different types of different areas and different locations. So one of these focuses was hyper-specific geolocating based on heat pump host activity. So we basically ran heat pump ads exactly where we knew heat pump hosts were located. But we found that this super specific location targeting was quite expensive to run on our paid platforms. It didn't really drive much traffic, and we risked location specific ads popping up outside of these areas, popping up to somebody who doesn't live in that area at all, which would isolate an audience and wouldn't be effective. We also ran some test ads on X, formerly Twitter, which was a kind of primary paid advertising platform for us. But due to the direction of the platform and content monitoring changes, we couldn't guarantee our ads were being served next to the content we wanted our brand to be associated with, and the audience just didn't feel like the right fit anymore. So these and other learnings informed our marketing strategy, which was a mixture of paid, owned and earned activity focused on key channels, upweighting key demographics, and with a broad location targeting range. So launch day was early this year, Thursday, the 11th of April. And we wanted to create a moment to focus through an official launch, so a line in the sand where we went live across the country with no cost and paid for advertising. Our stakeholder buy-in and amplification was really important on the day. So for our media approach, we issued a press release with supportive statements from the UK government, and Energy Minister Lord Callaghan called it a fantastic new service. We had quotes from our partners Octopus and Which, and we also had first-hand case studies, including quotes and images from heat pump hosts and visitors. And this proved really effective. We had a big media hit on the day with over 20 media pieces on launch day, coverage in The Guardian, The Independent, The Telegraph, The Standard, and The Daily Mail. Many of these outlets featured our heat pump hosts, so we were really taken by the case studies that we shared. On social media, our post was seen by over 50,000 people with more than 1,000 engagements. And all of this traffic from our social media, our newsletter and media shares resulted in 50 visits being booked for the weekend after the launch. So that's a really great demonstration there of the marketing funnel in practice. We had lots of stakeholder shares. So we had about 50 social media shares in our first 24 hours from stakeholders. That included heat pump hosts, stakeholders such as Heating Hub, One Home, DESNZ, so Department of Energy Security Net Zero, and the media outlets we've mentioned, so The Guardian, LBC, Independent, Business Green, BBC Radio, alongside a big heap of regional press. We were also featured on X's top trending page, which picks up trending conversation and creates a mini news story. And this is the first time that Nesta has been featured on this. We also had some celebrity endorsements on the day. So Evan Davis from Radio 4 and Dragon's Den personally endorsed the scheme on X. But momentum didn't just stop on our social media channels on launch day, and we wanted to make sure there were lots of touch points throughout the campaign to continuously remind people of the service and convert them into booking a visit. So we saw continued online support from our partners Octopus, Which and the UK government, who endorsed us on their channels. We made sure to continuously post organically throughout the 3-month campaign, and we achieved nearly 75,000 impressions. And our paid media activity ran for 3 months post-launch and generated nearly 3 million impressions and 32,000 clicks, many converting down to a visit. So our leading platform we found was Meta, so Facebook and Instagram, but TikTok actually showed us a lot of promising results as a paid media platform. We'd kind of written it off before in the past, but with quite a small spend, we managed to achieve thousands of clicks and reach our target older audience. So that was a really effective kind of way to test this platform and find out that we could use it in the future.
So more than 600 people across Great Britain have used our platform to visit a heat pump in the first 6 months of the service being live. The data that we've got finds that heat pump visits have taken place across the country, from Inverness to the Isle of Wight and Neyland to Norwich. Buckinghamshire, Shropshire and Bristol have the most heat pump hosts registered, while the most visits have taken place in Lambeth, Edinburgh and Stockport. But what matters to us is what happens next. So what is the impact? The stats are great, but what does this mean for heat pump, those curious about heat pumps? We're pleased to report that many visitors have since gone on to install a heat pump in their own home. One example of this is the lovely Lawrence, who visited Jonathan, and here's their story.
It seemed like the sort of thing that I wished had been around when we were deciding whether to get a heat pump, because that would have been a really straightforward way of getting like a proper experience of one rather than the leap into the dark. being on visitor heat pump and having people come over and actually see how that practically looks, practically feels, is, I think, an important leap for people to go, oh, maybe the way I think about heating is in like whether it's on or whether it works or how to schedule it and all that stuff is out of date.
It really changed my mind from wondering whether I should or not to deciding that I definitely wanted to. So it helped make that decision. And I went away from the meeting, went straight in and started to get some prices. He knew what he was talking about and I trusted him, and that was so much more meaningful than reading about it on a website or even a brochure or even somebody who's trying to sell it to you. He wasn't trying to sell me anything. He was just trying to be honest. But he was very enthusiastic and I became equally enthusiastic. So if anybody ever comes around here, I'm quite happy to show them my heat pump and say how wonderful it is.
I'm going to stop that because it's going to play again. So thank you very much for listening. We hope you found that interesting, even though it was about heat pumps, which we get very excited about at Nesta, but not everybody does. But we hope it was insightful and that you found it worthwhile listening to. But we're happy to take any questions you may have.
Just going to say there's some great questions in the chat already, so do keep them coming. And it was, I equally get excited about heat pumps, so I found it fascinating, especially how you applied the behavioural principles, but in a way that was really, really useful and practical and has clearly made a difference. So the first question is from Joanna. So it was just a bit about what sort of budget you had for your paid advertising, if you'd be able to share that at all.
Yeah, so we had a budget of about £20,000, so that was our kind of whole campaign budget. So we used that for testing, for that kind of pre-build phase where we were trying to kind of gather data on what worked best, and then after we kind of had those insights, we went away and came up with a paid media plan, which included a range of platforms. Most of the budget went on Meta ads and also on Google ads, but then we kept back a small amount of spend for TikTok. We also run some kind of paid partnerships with an organisation called Loop Homes, which have a great database of subscribers interested in kind of home renovations, and also a paid partnership with Installer Mag, who have a great installer database to try and get installers signed up to the platform. So we kind of really try to work hard to utilise the budget and make it work as hard as possible, using it on lots of different platforms across the 3-month period. And yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, no, that's great. And did you have a sense of what kind of works best? Because I think you said the sort of really targeted geolocated stuff didn't work as well as other stuff. And then one thing I'm just going to say, because I think you're able to use TikTok because that's national, but I think TikTok is not. There's lots of local authorities in the call, and I think the TikTok still isn't localized just yet. But yeah, any thoughts on what worked out of the different types of I suppose targeting, what worked best?
Yeah, so Meta was our leading platform. We found that to be really effective. We got a lot of bang for our buck with our Meta ads. We felt that really suited our target audience, that kind of older demographic, people in community groups, that kind of thing. What else was a learning? Yeah, you mentioned the kind of the super specific location targeting. That was quite hard to run because of the nature of the service. So we would have hosts putting up setting up a slot for people to visit in a specific area, and we kind of just couldn't make the super specific geo-targeting work around that, and we just kind of felt like it wasn't an effective use of our spend. I'd say as well, just as much as the paid advertising worked, we really found value in the stakeholder marketing, and getting those partners on board, and getting our hosts involved with the marketing. We kind of found that paid advertising was great, but that was kind of only one part of the mix and one part of the funnel. So kind of getting all of those different areas working in tandem was really effective to drive a visit.
Yeah, as is often the case with campaigns like this, but that's really interesting to hear. So moving on to the next one. So from Steph, to what extent did you feel you needed to take account of hostility or misinformation about heat pumps, busting myths, all that kind of thing?
Yeah, and I think Dean's asked something similar about what the biggest challenges we had to overcome around misinformation, apathy, lack of interest. So we're really aware of where this service sits in terms of the audience. So it's such a strange thing to do, to go and visit somebody you've never met and chat to them about their heating. It's so remotely, kind of so difficult for some people to do. So we weren't trying to target people who were weary of the technology. We weren't trying to target people who didn't know anything about the technology. We've got other services for that. The visitor heat pump service sits at that point where someone's done their research, wants to do it, but just doesn't have the confidence to take the next step. So this service sits towards the end of that customer journey, and it gives them that incentive and that real life validation. Right, I'm ready now. Who was your installer then? I might phone the same person, rather than someone at the beginning of the journey who doesn't even know if a heat pump's suitable for their home, or what the finances are like. So we've got a website that sorts that bit out. So we weren't trying to reach people who necessarily were critical of the service. But what we did find was at the start, a few people did book on to go to visits to try and disrupt the visit.
Cause a bit of trouble.
Very strange. I don't know if anyone's asked a question about this, but all of our hosts do it for free. The altruism is just, it doesn't stop. They just
That is amazing.
No, we didn't offer anything. We thought, let's see how long the altruism lasts, and it's keeping going. And as a result, I think it's such a friendly vibe. People have kept in touch with their hosts after they visited, that kind of, like, the few naysayers that tried to jump in were turned off straight away. And also journalists, the service is open and very free for anybody to use. So you could get in touch with any host you want and say, can I come and see your heat pump? And journalists have done that. And there's been some really positive stories as a result, because they can't really argue with a person who's living that experience. So when they go to see someone, if they went to see Pamela in Buckinghamshire today, where it's really cold, and Pamela said, well, I'm really toasty, I haven't even got socks on, it's really warm, my kids love it, you can't really argue with that. So I think hearing it from the horse's mouth does demonstrate that it is a valid tech, but I absolutely know where this service sits, and it's not at the start of the journey.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting what you said, and I think that's a great example of how to run a behaviour change campaign, because actually it's thinking about what is the very specific behaviour you want to change. And often if you know that you've got people who are willing to change behaviour, getting them to change their behaviour is always going to be much easier than someone that's never going to engage. So it's great to hear about a campaign doing something along that ilk. And then also, I love the whole thing about the objective about visiting a stranger's house as a great objective for a campaign. But also, I was going to say, because I've done quite a lot of work around heat pumps and this kind of stuff, and I thought it was really interesting how you focused on that, actually having a real life person and kind of showing and demoing it can be so much more effective than kind of an organisation doing it. So it's an actual real life person, which is fascinating. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next question. So from Emma, so did you interact with or use any of the existing green tech heat pump YouTubers as part of the campaign?
We did look into doing that. We scoped that out with quite a lot of detail, because we've worked with influencers for previous consumer campaigns that we've run. So we looked at kind of doing that on a paid basis. We scoped out some quotes from influencers, and we actually had a discussion with an agency who specialise in kind of influencer partnerships to see how that might work. But we felt for this campaign, so the real interesting insights that the agency kind of gave us was it's much more effective to work with influencers on a kind of a longer campaign and seed moments through the year, not just having a kind of one-off moment where you pay a few £1,000 for an Instagram story, for example, and then it kind of gets lost in the ether. It's much more effective to kind of seed it through the year with different bits of content at different touch points. And because that this was a shorter campaign, we felt that that wasn't quite right for this. But we did send out organically information about the campaign, and we did have a YouTuber come and visit, and they did feature it on their YouTube channel, which was great to see. But if we were kind of going to run this as a longer campaign in the future, it would definitely be something we'd want to look into on that kind of longer term basis.
And then there was a question from Steph, which leads neatly on about, does it have a finite lifespan? So I think, am I right in saying that it lasts for a certain amount of time, but this toolkit will still be available to people?
The service is going to run as long as it's needed. So we are looking at different options with different organisations. For example, for Octopus, whether they could have some kind of service where they can just promote their installations to their customer base. So you'd see like a version of Visit a Heat Pump where you could just see an Octopus install if you wanted to. We're also working with small and medium installers to make sure they can get a business profile on the page and keep promoting it. But I think Evan Davis's tweet summed it up on launch day, where he said it's going to be brilliant where we live. We'll look back on this at one point and think how quaint it was that we ever needed this service. But at the moment we do. So we're hoping to run Visit a Heat Pump until we exhaust our hosts, but also until it's no longer needed, because everyone can see a heat pump wherever they are. So that's the finite time. I wanted to come back to Georgia, who's asked a similar question to George around the toolkit for local authorities. Yes, we will share the toolkit after this message, after this call with you. But George, you say there's no heat pump hosts in your area. We've absolutely got support for you to get messages out, to encourage your residents, if they're heat pump owners, to sign up to the service. So we'll share those packs with everybody on the call.
Excellent, that's great. And we are recording it. There was a question about whether we're recording it, so we'll share that and all the slides. Question from Alice: is there something for other energy efficiency measures, so things like external wall insulation, solar, all that kind of stuff as well?
We don't offer a visitor solar or visit anything else with this, because the kind of awareness and confidence in the technology is slightly different. However, we do have a website called Get a Heat Pump, which has got information about the things you can do to your home to increase to get ready for a heat pump and how you can maximize its potential. So we don't have that service, but I'm sure that there are people out there offering different kind of opportunities to visit different low carbon technology.
You've got a cat coming in behind you. Excellent timing. He or she wants to be the star of the show. And I'll also share, so I've got a toolkit that I worked with on the Northern Housing Consortium to help develop more around retrofit and kind of energy saving measures in general. I'll share that as well afterwards. Another quick question about what influencer agency did you work with?
I was just trying to casually look through my emails to see if I could find it, because it's completely escaped me, but we can include that as part of the information that we send around after this.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll drop an email to everyone. So another question from Alice. So how many visits has each property had on average so far? And what if there are too many requests and the resident feels overwhelmed? Good question.
Excellent. I think it's the other way around. So we're getting hosts saying, can you share that marketing pack? We want to increase the number of visitors we have.
Excellent.
So we haven't exhausted them yet. They're not overwhelmed. We've got a report, which I'll share a link to when we do the kind of email roundup of this. But to date, most hosts have had fewer than 6 places booked. 3 hosts have had 20 places booked for their events. So you'll be able to see a breakdown. I think that there's been, we've kind of broken it down between 1 to 5 visit 6 to 10, 11 to 20. The majority are 1 to 5. And so we're doing more with hosts for them to market their own events in their areas. So I'll share the report with you afterwards, and you can see all the different metrics that are in there.
Excellent. And I was just going to ask, where kind of next for the campaign? Is this kind of it, or are you going to take it in any other direction, or kind of see where it goes?
So we've stopped the paid for activity because we've done our budget, we've achieved what we wanted to in that respect. But we are now working on an installer-led business model. So, for example, the installer that works in your hometown, if he's got a profile page and his best installations are on there, and he's encouraged his customers to put their heat pumps on and be hosts, it's only going to grow that installer's business, because local people will go and visit local good installs, get recommended. So we're working very hard with the installation community to get small to medium installers and the big boys like Octopus and Era to have their customers act as hosts, because it only benefits them. And we know that there's a real kind of gap in terms of people wanting to move from gas engineers to become heat pump engineers, but there's not enough business in their area to sustain that. So this is a model which is also helping grow interest for installers and potentially help people shift over to that, to dumping gas and moving on to heat pumps. So that's our big focus going forward.
Sorry, I thought the screen froze there. Yeah, just want to say, I think that's everything. I think that is there one more question before we go? I think it was more of a comment about, I get the same with having an EV, strangers come up while public charging or knock on my door to ask questions. That's really, really interesting point. So just finally to say, yeah, thank you so much for coming along. I could spend all afternoon talking to you about heat pumps, and I absolutely love your campaign, but we are going to have to let everyone get back to their afternoons. So we will be sharing everything from today, the toolkit, stuff like that you can use in your organisation. And do get in touch if you've got any further questions. And thank you so much to Ellen and to Grace. Really, really interesting webinar, and look forward to seeing everyone on one of my webinars soon in the very near future. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye now.